Hello. Our next speaker is the head of development at Giant Spacekat, as you can see. Giant Spacekat is an all-female game development company that works with Unreal. She was also just named one of the 25 most awesome women in game development. That's pretty cool, right? Brianna Wu.
All right, great, mic is working. So, yeah, thank you all for coming today. I have to tell you, I started with 2 talks for this. The first one was before I came here. All my friends, my female friends in development were like, you don't want to be too aggressive. You want to be really nice. You don't want to, really kind of make any waves. And then I heard about Mike's talk yesterday, which made ample use of the F word. So I figure if you guys could handle Mike's talk, you could handle the real talk that I wanted to give. So just to make sure, if you guys want me to do the Oprahized version right now, can you raise your hand for me? Does anybody? All right, we're about to get real. Awesome. So, women in tech has been huge in the news lately. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And I just really wanted to start this by saying I didn't want to give this talk today. I would have rather have talked about Unreal, 3D, any development topic, metal. And I think when I look at other women I know in the industry, they don't really want to talk about this either. It's not fun for us. Like, we are exactly like you. We want to do cool development stuff. But it's like the environment has gotten to a point where we have to speak up, and we have really got to start making changes here. This literally can make or break our careers. We get pushed out of tech in so many different ways. With children, we just have one argument too many. We're dissed one time too many. And it's really, really important, if we really value diversity beyond lip service, to really talk about this and start addressing this stuff. So, you're going to see the next slide, but if we're looking at this year in tech, like this is the last month of stuff that's come up. Well, 2 months with Julianne. I mean, GitHub, that was a damn mess. You have a guy that gets a ton of venture capital funding, beats his girlfriend allegedly 117 times on videotape. You have code babes. I didn't particularly personally have a problem with code babes, but it upset a lot of people. You have Google releasing their diversity numbers. About 1 in 5 of their women, of their people in leadership are women. If we want to look at the wider picture here, like this is just the stuff from this year. This year. I mean, my God, it's like every other week. I don't even want to look at my Twitter feed to find out what's going on. So, it's really at a point where we've got to start addressing this stuff. So, my talk is going to be just laying it down for you. I'm a developer, I'm an engineer, and I want to just tell you flat out, like, what women experience and tell you in very straight language, like what not to do and what to do. So, if you guys don't mind, let's get right to it. So, the biggest thing I run into when I try to talk about gender issues on app.net or Twitter is you kind of have this sense for men that it's kind of a game for them. It's a fun thing to discuss. Like, hey, I didn't like the Mass Effect 3 ending. Hey, I thought the last episode of Lost wasn't that good. It's kind of this, especially because we're nerds, it's kind of this hypothetical thing that you think about. But the one perspective I would really like to give you today is, for us, it's not that way. Talking about sexism in tech is deeply personal. It hurts to talk about. It embarrasses you to talk about. I'm going to be showing you guys a rape threat that I got earlier this year. I've had 9 so far this year. It's not easy for me to share that with you. So what I want you to know is when women in tech talk about this stuff for you, it's not a hypothetical. It's really hard for us to come forward and talk about it. So, rather than kind of, arguing about it like the way you would the Mass Effect 3 ending, show some basic sensitivity. Just take a beat, put yourself in that woman's shoes, and think about what she's experiencing trying to talk to you about this stuff. If your friend was getting divorced, I mean, I'm sure we've all had friends who have gone through this. Would you sit there and go like, yeah, I don't know, 2 out of every 3 marriages end in divorce is probably not that big a deal. Like if you had, an African-American friend that was experiencing this in tech, and by the way, as bad as it is for women, let's not forget there are a lot fewer African-Americans in tech than there are women. You can never say that enough. It's another thing we really need to address. But if someone was like African-American telling you about their experiences, would you really pipe in and tell them they're wrong? I mean, would you? I don't understand why people do this to women all the time. It truly mystifies me. Friends that are parents, would you, if someone's telling you it's hard for them to have kids and to balance and find time, would you sit there and talk down to them and tell them that they're just wrong? Please stop doing this to women. Other thing that really happens when women talk about our experiences in tech, invariably people chime in, men chime in specifically, and tell us that we're flat out wrong. You tell us our feelings are wrong. You tell us our experiences are wrong. This is just one thing. Like I got catcalled on the way over here this morning 5 times. It scares the fuck out of me every single time it happens. This is just for a few days ago. And somebody telling me my experience, my fear is just paranoia. That's fucking obnoxious. Don't do that shit. The truth is, if we're talking about, when women talk about our lived experiences, this is what we deal with every single day. These are our lives. Our lives inform this. It's not hypothetical. And with all respect for guys, it generally is hypothetical for you. You lack these life experiences. You don't know what it's like to walk down the street and worry about this stuff. You're just missing a perspective with complete respect. And something else I wanted to say is, even if you completely disagree with the woman's opinion or you think she's factually inaccurate, the truth is the emotion is always true. A few years ago, I was looking at a study, and if people have Alzheimer's, a big problem is they try to sneak out of the hospital and get on the bus and go home because they just don't know where they are and they forget about that. And the thing that the nurses had to really learn in dealing with that is, even though it was not factually true that they were not home and lost, that emotion for those people was very true. It was always very terrifying for them. So even if you disagree with a woman on this stuff, her emotion is always correct. And you need to respect that. We've talked about this. Like, these are our lived experiences. We deal with this stuff absolutely every day. Just give it a little bit of respect. So number 3 is going to be, this for me is what it's very frustrating in tech about talking about these issues. Seems like every single time I bring up women in tech issues and talk about diversity, it really feels like it's automatically hijacked and turned into the subject of how does this affect men? What's going on for men? This is really all about men. Like, this is a cartoon. I'm sure you all saw it go viral. And it's a really self-centered way to approach the topic. I am aware that as we have a more diverse workforce, and as maybe you can't use some language or you need to show some more sensitivity with your slides, I am aware that that affects you. But it's ultimately not about you. It's about us. The truth is, and again, I say this with all respect, but the views of men are everywhere in tech already. They are everywhere. If you're a woman in tech, your views are generally not really represented in the same way. There's this thing called the ring theory. It's about how to not say the wrong thing. And the theory is, if you're in the center of grief, that the empathy and care flows towards you. And you always make it about the person that's in a closer ring of the circle. Imagine if somebody has cancer. This is where this theory came from. This woman had cancer, and one of her colleagues came and told her, well, this doesn't just affect you, this affects our whole department. Kind of an asshole thing to say, right? So the idea is, if you're in the center of the circle, it's about you. If you're slightly outside the circle, if your mom, your sister, your husband has cancer, You're going to have feelings too. So the ring outside of you needs to direct comfort in. This is how to talk about this stuff without sounding like an asshole. So, just stop doing that. All you need to do is to simply start listening. Yeah, I went to the Beard Bash last night, and I was talking to just a really fantastic guy there. Really just very nice person, obviously cared a lot about women in tech. But something happened that happens to me so frequently when I deal with these issues. So someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, you're Brianna Wu. I know you. I've heard you talk on this subject before. I'm having this problem with diversity for my team. And then they sit there and monologue with me, to me, for a good 20 minutes about what is what, and what is sexism, and what women experience, and what direction we need to go. This is not a way to get different opinions in. This is just talking at us. If I can ask you for anything, even if you don't agree with women talking about their experiences in tech, just listen to them. Just close your mouth and listen. You're going to learn some stuff. This next one is something I'm truly embarrassed about how little we talk about this in technology. And before I go to the slide, I want to tell you a story. When I started Giant Spacekat, we had one woman that was working with us part-time. She'd done contract work with us, and we were trying to figure out how to bring her on full-time. And she was working at a AAA game dev studio in Boston. And then she got pregnant. They literally fired her the very next day. I'm amazed it's legal. I could not believe they did that. We hired her and got a fantastic worker that is 2,000 out of 10 dedicated to our team. This is something we don't talk about. I don't have kids. I don't have a dog in this fight. But I do know so many female engineers that struggle with this. And it seems like the same thing happens over and over. They have kids and they find themselves not invited to meetings, or people assume they don't care. A lot of networking events are held after hours, after 5. They can't go. And they just start getting generally, slowly pushed out of the field. And again, this doesn't affect me, but I see this as the huge problem in tech that we don't talk about. Somebody in the species has to have the children. The race has to go on. And this burden is on women. And all of you that are out there, whether you're just a teammate or a manager, you have a responsibility to work with women to have children and help them stay in the field. If any of you out there are managers like I am, it is a pain in the ass to find good people and retain them. It's expensive. It takes time to retrain them. So I beg you to do what you can to work with women after they have children in this field. Because it really feels like, when I look around, there are a lot of women in this field in their 20s. And now I start looking for women that are my age, in their 30s. There are fewer of us. I think this is really important. So, something I feel it's really important to do. I want to tell you another story about my company. So when I started Giant Spacekat, I started looking out there at who I knew in the industry, who I wanted to work with. And I hired one person that happened to be a woman. And then we were looking for someone else, and she brought in someone else that happened to be a woman, someone that she knew in school. And then I started looking around at who else I knew. Like, the more we grew, the more people we added. And it just so happened that I happen to know a lot of women in the industry. So our next hire was a woman. We never set out to be an all-female development team. It just kind of happened. So I have immense compassion for people when they tell me, we have no problems working with women. This is just who we hired. Because you do. You hire your friends. I do. That said, I would really urge you, if you're a man out there in the audience tonight, I went to Beard Bash last night. I had a great time. But the truth is, this is a party you're walking into with a bunch of men. And, it's like a gut check, even for me. I'm super extroverted, and I have to like take a breath to like go do this every single time. And, you know, women sometimes don't fall into these events. And what happens is, unless you make a deliberate effort to go out there and be inclusive, you end up with the same candidates that look exactly like you. You know, white, male, techies. Yeah, we're just talking about women. I imagine how this affects you if you're gay. I've seen a lot fewer African Americans at WWDC than I have women. You know, without deliberate effort, the same thing starts to perpetuate. So I would really put it to every single man out there in the audience today. You have a responsibility. If you really care about women in tech, you really care about this issue, you can't just say, I believe in it. It's not enough to believe in an idea. You've got to change. You have to deliberately make an effort to go out there and include more women in your network. I promise you, there are fantastic female candidates out there. I know so many unbelievably talented women in this industry. You know, this is another real problem that I run into sometimes when I talk to people. They start the conversation by saying, I'm a nice guy, or identifying themselves as like an ally of women in the industry. And it's not that I don't think that they're a nice guy, it's that it just closes off the conversation immediately. You know, if you say, I'm a nice guy, this is a way of saying, I have no accountability. I have no part in this. I'm a good guy. I know everything I need to know about sexism. And what I truly don't understand is, in my entire career, I've run into exactly one person in my entire career that's come up to me and has said, yeah, Brianna, I want to be honest with you. My behavior in the past was sexist. And I've been thinking about it, and I realize I'm wrong and I need to change. It's one person out there. We all agree this is a very sexist industry with some real diversity problems. And what I would pose to you, with all respect, you have a part to play in that. You are making mistakes. I make mistakes. When I had this phenomenon that a lot of other women do in tech, where I first got into this field, I myself had some internalized sexism. I'd spent so much time identifying myself as not one of those girls, so I kind of had to get over some of those emotions. And I know other engineers in the industry that have had to do the same. We all have a role to play in growing and learning and self-assessing and getting better. We have to take responsibility. I really put it to you. If you've ever talked to a woman about these issues and monologued at her, I'd really urge you to sit there, think about that. Pledge to do better. It doesn't make you a sexist to make a mistake. We all make mistakes. You've got to look at your actions, take accountability, and move forward. This was, I think, the biggest thing that I don't believe that men get in this industry. We all watch Mad Men, or at least I do. And I think a lot of us believe that sexism in tech is this moment where a bunch of guys are sitting around a conference table and they're smoking a cigar and they're drinking. They say, oh, women can't program, and they just fire some woman or slap her on the ass. And this is not how sexism happens. And we had the Yes All Women thread that went really viral a few weeks ago. And I know a lot of men read that and were really taken aback by what it was like out there being a woman. And you have to understand, it's just not this framework that you have in your mind. It's much more subtle, and it's much more insidious. It's harder to address. The Mad Men moments are very simple to focus on. You look at that person and you fire them. How do you address someone that monologues at women, someone that makes women and tech issues all about them? Much harder to solve. This is just a fucking morning on Twitter for me. Yeah, this is a slide. It's going to be the next tech controversy. You know, this is someone doing a presentation. The company's already denounced it. It's talking about Maven. Looks beautiful, complains a lot, demands my attention, interrupts me while I'm working, doesn't play well with my other friends. Guys, this is how the fuck women get pushed out of this industry. It may seem like a joke to you, or it may not seem like a big deal, and individually it's not. But what women experience in this industry is the death of 1,000 cuts. It's stuff like this. We deal with it every fucking day. When I turn on my Twitter after I repost this, and I have people mansplaining to me about how my opinions are wrong about this and how the guy didn't really mean anything, or how it would be fine if he were talking about a man, and all this fucking asinine stuff. Just don't fucking do it. It's exhausting to talk about these issues and be told over and over again, you are wrong. Yeah, don't sit there and when a woman talks about that slide bothering her, you know, don't mansplain at her what she should be actually feeling, because you do this. Believe me. This is a harder thing to talk about. Again, I'm saying this with all respect to the men in the audience, but when I talk to you guys sometimes about these issues, it really seems to me that you feel like if the system doesn't keep going on the way it is, if you have to make any change at all, if you have to be more inclusive, if you can't tell a joke, if you can't hire your friends, you can't have an all-male team, that this is oppression for you. And the fucking truth is, it's not. I truly wonder how many men would last in this industry if they dealt with what I deal with on a daily basis. I've had 9 rape threats sent to me this year. I've had 10 threats of violence sent to me this year. Come back to that slide. This is one I got just, God, what was this? This was from Giant Bomb. I wrote a piece critiquing how few women are going to be voting for Game of the Year, because we're simply not, there are not many female journalists in game dev. It's an industry that, you know, is run by men. Men are the journalists, men make the games, men fund the games, men are the managers. And I run a piece like talking about how women are not going to be choosing Game of the Year this year. This is what I get. This is fucking oppression. Having to think about your behavior a little bit and make some changes is not. What I feel like you guys don't understand is the entire culture of technology is a huge boys' club. I was sitting outside of AltConf just yesterday. I'm trying to Skype with my husband. And no disrespect to the people here, but there are a bunch of guys sitting around talking, making jokes about, you know, somebody being a cocksucker and just all this very lurid stuff. It just pushes me away. It's like your culture that you've created. Everything about tech, it's built for you so much that you don't even see it. You know, I went to the WWDC girls' lunch yesterday, and it's completely different than this conference. It's a bunch of women sitting around, we're gang in groups, and we take turns talking, and we share our experiences, we make sure everyone is included. If you're a woman, this kind of communication style comes very naturally to you. But the thing I think that men don't understand is the culture of tech is a bunch of people staying in a group and you just fight and talk, and you know, the loudest voice sometimes wins. And it's not that I think that that's bad or it cannot be. I'm just asking you to understand that it's not the only way. You know, women are 51% of the population. We sometimes communicate differently. If tech were run by women, it would probably be a very different industry. This is the other thing I really need you to understand. You know, it's never going to be the 90s again, where it's men making all the video games. It's not going to be the 90s where it's primarily men that are engineers and coders. You know, Gene McDonald is doing, you know, App Camp for girls, When I was at the WWDC lunch yesterday, there were a ton of 20-year-old women that were very interested in the industry. And talking to them, they're pretty fucking sharp, too. They're going to go and make a difference. We are here. Gay people are here. African Americans are here. People that are not white are here. It's going to stay on this trajectory. And the truth is, like, you can either move with the times, make changes, understand this stuff is really important, or you can be the joke in a Mad Men punchline. The person stuck in the past, and frankly, the person that gets fired when they do things like put up that awful slide. This is really, really important stuff. This is my last one. We're going to get to some questions. I want to tell you guys a story. So, Giant Spacekat we had somebody we were doing business with. And I'd had a really, really bad day. I'd had, just another day, some rape threat came in. It scares the fuck out of me every time it happens. My husband came home. He was trying to console me. I've been crying, frankly. It really scares me when this happens. And, I was trying to talk to someone we were doing business with about my day and what had happened. And, he listened, nodded politely, said, "What can I do to help you?" And I said, "You can start speaking up on these issues. Your voice, frankly, matters more than mine does. You can be a louder voice than me." And he just laughs at that statement and says, "I don't know about that." Ha ha ha. This is not a problem that women can solve on their own. I know as soon as I get off this talk, I'm going to get tweets from people, or people are going to tell me I'm some angry, unreasonable feminist for talking about this. But the truth is, guys, if you talk to your male friends out there, you guys have a tremendous amount of power as peers to talk to them and say, "Look, dude, this isn't okay. You can't do this. You can't talk this way. You need to think about this behavior. You guys can make a difference in a way that I can't." Because when I talk about this stuff to the guys that are doing it, it's in one ear and out the other. So if you are an ally in any way, shape of the word, I implore you, speak up for us. We need you. Last thing, I want to start this conversation right now with some questions. What we're going to do is do that. Before we do that, I want to put this up there. I'm willing to talk about women in tech issues anytime, anywhere. If you have a podcast, invite me on. I'll talk about this stuff. You have a conference, I'll talk about it. We've got to make a change for this. I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to ask you guys to do the same. Anyway, let's go to some questions. Does anybody have one? Come on, don't be shy. It's always the first person.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
You gave us a lot of stick just now, but not a lot of carrot. I mean, obviously, we all want to live in a diverse culture. Hello? Oh. We want to live in a diverse culture. We want everyone represented.
Yeah.
But, other than just saying, that's nice, it's just something we should strive for as a society, why not also point out, like, hey, you're missing out on 50% of your talent pool. You're missing out on, quality workers when you exclude women. I think.
So are you objecting to my tone? Is that what you're saying?
No, a little bit. I think at
no,
it was just the question was
a
little bit. Why not point out the benefits before you give us all of the you guys are terrible people. It felt a little bit like you're just. I'm not speaking from privilege. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
why not incentivize the
you are.
Well. All right, maybe I am. I apologize for that.
No. Let's talk about this. Yeah, this is why, before I went and did this talk today, people were talking to me like, word absolutely everything's a positive. The truth is, like, if it were a man up here giving this talk, you might feel a little less threatened. If a woman voices her opinion strongly, we're held to a very different standard. I'm sorry, it's it's difficult for you to like not get more carrot, but you know, like this is how I feel. This is what needs to be done. So I don't know what to say. Try getting some rape threats and just see how you feel. Let's go to someone else.
I have I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I have experienced, you know, some of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
not so much that anyone has threatened to rape me or anything like that.
Sure.
I have even though I look very quiet, I have a very aggressive personality. So it's not.
We should hang out later.
That hasn't been an issue for me. What has been kind of funny in my career, you know, people think I'm stupid, and it's really worked well for me because, you know, you know, people underestimate me, and that has kind of propelled me into a very successful position. But one of the things that I have noticed in tech is there is this guy that you profile, but in talking with men, there are just a lot of a lot of the guys are kind of geeky, shy, introverted.
Sure.
And after a talk like this, they're just like afraid to say anything. Because they're like, you know, anything that comes out of my mouth, gee, you know, is that sexist? Is that,
Sure.
And so it's kind of like there's a lot of people who really want to empathize with us and really want to engage with us.
Sure.
And, you know, and they don't know how to do that, you
Sure.
know, and they don't want to sound like an idiot. And so a lot of times after something like this, they're just afraid to say anything to you. They don't
Sure.
even want to talk to you because they're like, I don't know what that girl's going to think of me.
Sure.
You know, and is she going to think
You're
that...
making it all about men right now.
Well,
You are.
well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
though, the thing is that in order to get women into this, you have to engage them. I mean,
Sure.
I have to say, I had the other problem when I was a manager.
Sure.
I ended up hiring all women.
Sure.
And probably felt more like I was doing a reverse demonstration because if there were two candidates, I thought, I'm going to get the woman because she's going to work. And that's and that's probably
Sure.
terrible for reverse, discrimination. So I'm just saying that how can we differentiate, that guy that sends you that idiotic
Sure.
mail, that idiotic email from the kind of guy that doesn't know what to say. What do we say to them? And for women, I mean, of course, because I am a woman, I just feel like, hey, girls, just get out there and do it and start. My message to them is always, you don't have to feel inadequate because, I hear what you're saying because it's like
let's wrap this up and yeah.
Yeah. So all I'm just saying is
Yeah.
how do we engage everybody and because it's
Sure.
not so much gender, it's personality.
I agree with that.
How do we get the people that are yelling the loudest and being damaging to kind of
Yeah.
shut up, and how do we engage the quiet, sweet guys to kind of help us out,
I hear where you're coming
That's
from.
all I'm saying.
I want to be clear about something. I don't think you're a sexist for asking the question that you did. I don't think you're a bad guy. I think, I applaud you for asking a question. I genuinely do. I really do. My goal here is to ask you to kind of think about it from a different view here. And imagine, you're coming at it from, frankly, a position of some privilege. And, I'm not trying to be aggressive towards you, but we've got to start calling this stuff out. I think that there are a lot of women out there that do the softer thing a little bit more than I do. We have a lot of people that, there is a lot of carrot with some people. But for me, I'm angry about this stuff. It makes me angry, the things I see in tech sometimes. It makes me frustrated when I watch the WWDC keynote and they're panning to the same 3 or 4 women in the audience over and over and over again because there aren't that many women there. Right. So let's go to someone else.
So, obviously, I'm a man. So, I can't speak to, a lot of the threats that you get.
Sure.
But I am gay.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the Midwest, so I've been called an array of horrible names.
Sure.
So I moved here in about 2010. And I remember, one of my first jobs, I don't remember what I said, something fairly innocuous. But I think my boss at the time took that as, I guess it was a little leading that I might be gay, but he basically said, oh, well, that would explain a lot.
Sure.
So you know, for me, like going into new work environments, it can be intimidating because maybe it's wrong of me, but I've started kind of stereotyping these types of people who make these comments. And so, you know, like when I go into a new work environment, if it's not an environment that's very diverse, it's very off-putting to me. And as, you know, I consider myself to be, you know, I think I'm fairly good at what I do. So, you know, I guess my question really is, what advice do you have to people or women in particular when you go into these environments that are very intimidating, you know, with people who you, like those types of people have actually, you know, hurt you in the past. So, you know, I mean, it's difficult for me, and I'm sure it's even more difficult for you.
And I think, like, when we talk about women in tech, I think we do not talk enough about what gay men experience in tech. I think we don't talk about what, you know, gay women experience in tech, what people of color experience in tech. I think it's a real personal thing. Like, I know a lot of women in the industry that the way they've learned to cope is to just not say anything. Like, if you look at Julianne, you know, Horvath, before all this stuff happened, she was very famous for having this attitude of just make great stuff and you'll be okay. You know, I know some women in the industry that just kill you with sweetness to kind of, you know, just don't say anything unpleasant. I know some women that kind of have gone the other way. You get very seriously rewarded in tech if you take this attitude of, oh God, I just wish these women would shut up. And, you know, if you're a woman saying this, and I don't understand why they're complaining about this all the time. And, you know, I'm actually privileged in this industry because I'm different. Like, you get rewarded for that. And I think different people experience that different ways. You know, for myself, you know, I run a company. I'm a leader. I mean, I deal with it directly. So, you know, I think it's up to the person. So, do we have more questions?
Just a quick point. I think what the first gentleman was saying was potentially you might achieve your goal better if you let men know the disadvantage, not just because it's the right thing to do, they should do this, but also because they will, like, women don't feel comfortable working for them if they exhibit the behaviors you talked about earlier. Therefore, they'll lose out, and that actually directly affects them. That maybe you don't care, maybe you want them to understand that it's bad. But like, for example, in my work environment, we've had women come through and leave, and they haven't been successful, not in terms of their work, but they haven't been happy or whatever, they quit, right? So maybe it's we didn't realize the way we acted or something was causing these things. So not even so much because it's right or, you know, it's sexist or whatever, but because it'll be better for the whole industry if we treat them better because they'll work better in that environment. That's all.
So what's your question? It's just a comment?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to hear if you agreed with that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I had 45 minutes, including, you know, some of our questions. We couldn't get to everything. You know, an analogy I heard recently that I really saw and I loved is, you know, so frequently, imagine if you were taking a math class, and imagine, like, I'm a graduate student in math, and somebody comes in and, you know, they're a first-year freshman, they're like, oh, what's with this irrational number thing? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, that's a bunch of crap. And, you know, the grad student just kind of points to, you know, Mathematics 101, you know, textbook in the corner. You know, it's like, educate yourself. Like, to a certain extent, I think it's unfair to put the burden on women to educate the men around them. I think, you know, it's ultimately, I'll fight for it. I do it myself. But ultimately, like, you guys are the ones doing it. It's up to you to a certain extent to educate yourself on these issues. You know, and again, I'll talk to anyone anytime about this stuff. But, you know, you can't, you know, a feminist or someone that talks on these issues is not McDonald's. You know, like, we're not going to give you your order just how you like it, you know, made for you. Like, you know, we all have our own perspective. Let's go to someone else.
So
what's up?
I think the company I work for a company in tech, we actually have a really good mix of women. And I'm really happy about that. But how can we know if we're doing a good job of trying to be inclusive and trying to be a good environment for women. I mean, we can ask them,
Sure.
but if they're intimidated, they might not, say honestly if there is a problem. So like, how can men like see problems before they start?
I really think if you just talk to women, they're going to tell you. I really do. I understand, like, if it's something extreme, we might not. But, the GitHub controversy, I can't name any names here, but I ran an op-ed talking about it and its effects on tech. And, I had some engineers from that company call me afterwards and talk to me about the investigation at GitHub and how the company genuinely, this is their opinion of what they're telling me, but how the company genuinely cared about these issues and wanted to find more out. And, I think that it's just, like, if you can establish this bond of trust with someone, it doesn't matter if they're a woman, it could be if they're gay, if they're, a person of color. Like, sit down and ask them, like, are we doing enough here to include people like you? I think they'll give you an honest opinion. So I have 5 minutes left, so let's go quickly. Yeah.
Ken Young, Tim Cook this year got up at the keynote and bragged about, I believe, 70% of the people being first-time attendees and the youngest being 13 years old. So how do you and how do we as a group get Tim Cook to stand up next year at 2015 and brag at 50% of the attendees are women, 10% of the people are gay, and say it with the same pride and determination that he said the other two things today? I
think we keep talking about this. I think you email him. You say he reads his email in the keynote. So, I'll make this point very quickly because we're almost out of time. But, Jean McDonald is here. I love what she does. App Camp for Girls. It's a fantastic organization. And, I think this is a really, really great organization. She's having a fundraiser. You should go to it. You should give them money. But I think that it is a great idea to get more women involved with this. But I also think if we don't address some of these systematic issues, I think that they're going to hit the exact same stuff I hit and my team hits and other women I know hit. So I think it's a really multifactorial solution that we have to do. But I think that would be a great idea. Let's see, how much time do we have? Okay, we got a few more. Let's keep going.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
Just wanted to give an additional answer to the guy who asked, how can we find out?
Okay.
What you said is correct, but in addition to that, I would advise him to get somebody as externally as possible and as shielded from the superiors as possible. Because whatever you ask people about, whether it be gender issues, whether it be work issues, people always are intimidated that if their superior finds out what they're saying and that they said that they would be reprimanded for that. So a good idea is to get either, if you're a large organization, set up a department to do that, a department that's completely separate from everything else. And so that the interviewers that come to the people, basically you don't see them for anything else but for the interviews. And that they make sure that your answers are completely anonymized.
Yeah.
And that the superiors do not have the possibility. My wife was working in a very small group. And so she was afraid, this wasn't on gender, it was just on work environment. She was afraid to give answers because she said, we're only 7 people.
Right.
My superior, who was also a woman, she will find out who said what. She will know. And we try to, where I work, we try to make this as external as possible. And to put a barrier between those people who are assessing it and those people who get the results. What you said is completely correct.
I think it depends on the size of the company, of course.
But you can get, I mean, as a small company, you can just hire external people.
I think that's why GitHub had an independent investigator team who they eventually ended up naming. I personally was one of the people who was kind of disappointed with their initial reporting, but then they went through and explained, like, this is to keep these people's names anonymous. So I definitely agree with you. Do we have any other questions? We're all good? All right. Thank you all for coming.